Jason, we've got a spring game on April 5th. It's March 17th, St. Patrick's Day. So they've got to be about halfway through, something in that range, I would think. Have we heard anything out of camp that means anything?
We're getting close to the halfway point. I don't know if I forget how many practices they've had already. They're in the middle of spring break right now. They'll reconvene first of next week, I think it is. But, the biggest things that's come out of camp so far, I would say, has probably been the talk of freshman running back Gideon Davidson. Dabo Sweeney has routinely talked him up. And as we all know, anybody that follows Clemson knows there's a big hole at running back. When Phil Moffitt, he's no longer here. And then when he went down last year, not went down, but when he got hurt, the running game almost evaporated. There was nobody behind him they really trusted. They still had to keep feeding him the ball despite the fact he was playing with one shoulder, basically. And, with him gone, there's a spot there to be, for the taking. And I think Gideon Davidson so far is doing everything he's supposed to do. Whether he wins that job, in time for game one against LSU, who knows? Dabo tends to like to lean on those veteran guys more so when they open up against big opponents like that. We didn't see a lot of TJ Moore and Bryant Wesco in the opener against Georgia last year, and then all of a sudden they're out there almost immediately against App State in the second game. We'll see if that philosophy changes a little bit. But, he's really talked up Adam Randall, who made the move from receiver to running back. He looks weird out there working out with all those running backs, as big as he is and as tall as he is. He's not your average everyday running back, but, all the right things are being said. You're hearing a lot of good things about the offensive line. They return 4 or 5 starters. But the biggest thing, I would say is some of the things you're hearing from the defense and the focus being put back on the fundamentals and just the little things like tackling, something Clemson was so bad at last year. When Tom Allen had his presser, or he met with the media right at the beginning of the spring practice, he said some things that were pretty eye-opening. He said one of the first things he did was went back and watched some practices from last year, and he said it didn't take him long to realize, hey, that's not the way you do it. This is not the way you do it. And they talked about it seemed like the scheme was too complicated, and they probably spent far more time trying to teach the scheme than they did the basic things like tackling and where to line up and, proper technique and those kind of things. And I think there has been a focus put back on those kind of things this spring. I fully expect this defense. We all know it's got talent. I fully expect this defense to take a big step forward in year number 1 under him, because they don't let us watch much of spring practice. When they do let us in, they let us watch a few periods. And Tom Allen's on the microphone, so you can hear him wherever you are on the practice fields. And he's more focused on the defense more so than one position. And he's not only coaching the players, but he's kind of coaching the coaches, man. And he's a no-nonsense guy, man. He's pretty intense. And I would say, and I'm a big believer in saying that I don't think, I've said it many times, I didn't think Wes Goodwin's, lack of intensity was his problem at Clemson. But, Tom Allen is the exact polar opposite of Goodwin when it comes to, being fiery and that kind of thing, because Wes was more laid back. But, it was an approach that worked with Brent Venables when he was here. We'll see if it works with Tom Allen while he's here, but so far you're hearing all the right things.
Clemson fans, if you're not too familiar with Tom Allen from his days at Indiana, here's a guy who, after one of their wins, basically did a victory lap around the field and against the wall. And the walls in that stadium in Bloomington are like, 8 feet tall. They're way too tall. So he's, high-fiving people, fans, just running the whole, and he's falling down. He's leaping as high as he can, falling down. There's another couple shots of him headbutting dudes that had helmets on and getting, cutting his forehead up, headbutting players. Yeah, he's an intense guy. He gets after it.
I want to say he said he knocked a tooth out one time doing that. So yeah, he's an intense guy, man. On the field, anyways, in a media setting and away from the field, he seems like a really good guy, and he seems like the perfect fit at Clemson, and at a time when they really need to shore up that defense. As we all know, it after it was pretty solid the first 2 seasons under West, man, it just fell off a cliff last year.
Yeah, based on some of his comments at his introductory news conference, it sounded like here was a guy who's lived the typical coach's life, and because of the ages of his kids and because of his, attachment or his fit, I should say, with the program and the beliefs and the way the program's run, he felt as though, okay, this is a place I'd love to settle down for a while, finish raising my family, and get ingrained in the Clemson culture here. All right, Jason, you bring up the defense. You want to get started on this? We got a defensive line where we got Peter Woods. He's a monster. He's back. Will Helt comes in for Purdue, where he was a bit of a playmaker. So how does the defensive front look to you?
You also get DeMonte Capehart back, who for a while I thought was probably headed off to the NFL. That the interior of that defensive line still loaded with talent. I thought after the season that they needed to go to the portal and address the spot at end opposite of TJ Parker. They do that with Will Helt. Probably a year too late, but that's another topic for another day. But he feels a big need. Clemson really struggled at that spot opposite of Parker last year. Run defense, setting edge, you name it. So if he can bring what he brought to Purdue and keep developing at that pace, then the sky's the limit. But that defensive tackle, the interior of that defensive line, that should be a strength. Peter Woods, there's some thoughts that maybe he got put on a little too much bad weight during the season last year. He looks really good. He looks like he has been putting in some work. He looks like he's shed a few pounds. Again, you get Capehart back. You got some young guys like Stephylon Green, who's gotten plenty of experience now. He's had 2 years in the system. Vic Burley's still there. You got some guys that redshirted last year that are chomping at the bits for an opportunity, and Champ Thompson and Heaven Brown Schuler. And then you got the true freshmen. From right here where I live, South Florence down the road, Amari Adams, the 5-star guy, the only 5-star in the class. He certainly looks the part, man. He's big, he's fast, he's strong, he's athletic. If he can pick up the defense, we'll see if he can avoid a red shirt, man. It's going to be hard with as much talent as there is in that defensive tackle room, but I think it's certainly a possibility.
Michael Barrett, obviously a big loss going to the NFL, but of course, Wade Woodaz also could have made that decision, but he's coming back for another season, so that's a big plus to the linebacking core. And Sammy Brown's a guy that Clemson fans want to see out there pretty much all the time this year.
Yeah, taking Sammy off the field against South Carolina in the fourth quarter might have been the nail in Wes Goodwin's coffin. But yeah, Barrett Carter moves on, but you got Sammy Brown and you got Wade Woodaz, and then you brought in a transfer there too with Jeremiah Alexander. He's a former 5-star guy, kind of got lost in the shuffle at Alabama over his first 3 years, redshirted his first year, then spent most of his time over the next 2 years on special teams. I think the change of scenery is probably going to be good for him. That was a guy Tom Allen talked about a good bit the last time we met with him, saying they got to find the right spot I guess the right fit for him would be the better word. And that was something they were working on. I think it sounds like he's been working out at will, but gives you a little bit more depth there. It should be a really good linebacker core. And with Sammy leading the way, he was so good as a freshman last year, particularly over the back half of the season. The more he played, the better he got. He should be one of the leaders on that defense this year. It's fun to think about how good they could be in the front seven over the next 2 years, and a big part of that is Sammy Brown.
Then when we're looking at the cornerback position, of course, people remember his brother, but we got Avion Terrell at one corner spot, Ashton Hampton as well. Can you set up the corner spots for us?
Yeah, I think Avion's a guy that's still got, he's got an extremely high ceiling. He's flashed it, he's shown it. I thought he struggled with his consistency a little bit, over the final quarter of the season last year. He's a little up and down, but he's a guy that, particularly now that he's going into what could be his money year and his third year. I think I expect big things from him, and everybody's high on Ashton Hampton. He's another guy that flashed as a true freshman last year. Now that he's got a year under his belt, he's going to be hard to keep off the field. Then you got a couple of guys that redshirted last year. Tafoy Fegan, who was a really good high school corner. He was so good they used to call him the seatbelt. And Corey and Gibson out of Texas, who redshirted last year, who was a really high-rated recruit coming out of high school. He's probably a name to keep an eye on. And Jaden Lucas is still around. He's not doing anything this spring, if I'm remembering right, because he had an off-season procedure done on his shoulder, I think it was. He's had some shoulder issues in the past, but that's a deep room there they've got at corner. Mike Reed's going to have some options there this year.
No more RJ Mickens at safety, but you got Khalil Barnes and others coming back.
Yeah, I think that's a big loss, man. RJ was so good on the back of that defense last year. It's cannot overstate how good he was and how much he improved over his time at Clemson. And last year was by far the best year of his career. So you got to replace that production. You get Khalil Barnes back, and with Tom Allen's defense, they're gonna run a lot of 4-2-5, so you're gonna see a lot of nickel. And Shelton Lewis is a guy that's probably gonna run out there some. Ricardo Jones is the first name that comes to mind to maybe step up and replace some of what you lost with Mickens. He's a guy that was a freshman last year and kind of like Hampton, flashed when he got some opportunities. He's long, he's athletic, man. He seems to play physical. So I like what he brings to the back end. Ronan Hannafin's a guy that they moved from receiver to safety last year. And we'll see if he can make some noise back there. Tom Allen mentioned him the other day when he was talking about nickel candidates. So you got some options there too. Some of them with not so much experience. That's the part they lack right now, but you got to get it somehow, man. They got some talented guys back there. They're just not quite as experienced once you get beyond Khalil Barnes and Shelton Lewis, who played a lot of nickel last year.
Jason, we know you got some time off, so we appreciate you stopping by, doing a little work for us. That was very nice of you.
I am home. I'm home till Thursday. I am not going to cover basketball this weekend, so I'll just be in Clemson covering baseball. So I'm home for Thursday. I think last night was the third time I've slept in my bed since like the 27th of February.
Well, summer's coming at some point, maybe even for a few weeks if that baseball team does some damage in the super regionals and beyond that.
July.
Yeah.
July. I get a little time off in July.
All right, Jason, we appreciate it.
All right, Mark. Appreciate it, man.
See you soon. Thanks, man.